Hello, my name is Wolf, and this is a note from the probability field. This is the first section of a two-part discussion in which we are working to gain more complete perspectives on several major issues surrounding the abortion debate in America. In particular, the constitutional, the medical, the religious, and one that gets a lot less attention in the media these days, the societal issues. I will do my best to stick to the known facts and valid data. There's just a lot of information, so that's why we're breaking this into two parts. In this first section, we're going to look into the religious and the medical fields. In part two, understanding the constitutional and societal realities. We will begin with the topic that seems most relevant to the core arguments of the debate right now. That's the medical. Also, this is the area most clearly defined and supported by objective scientific evidence. One of the major points of debate around abortion is fetal viability, meaning when does the ability of a human fetus to survive outside the uterus without extraordinary medical intervention, when does that occur? Officially, 39 weeks is considered full term for a normal pregnancy. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine have defined the final weeks of pregnancy as follows. Before 37 weeks, it's considered a preterm birth. Start of the 37th, to the end of the 38th week is considered early term. The 39th to the end of the 40th, considered full-term birth. From week 41 is a late-term birth, and from the 42nd week on, it's considered a post-term birth. Current research shows that babies born at full term statistically have better breathing and feeding capability, better even than those delivered in the early or preterm stages. Historic tradition puts the period of viability after the 28th week. Current data puts potential for viability beginning at 23 to 25 weeks. But we have to take into account this change is primarily supported by medical technology, and at this early stage of development, survival may depend entirely on the medical resources available at the time and place of the birth. Statistically, premature birth survival rates from just prior to the considered viability window are at 22 weeks or before 0 to 10%. 23 weeks, when the viability window opens, it's 10 to 35%. Still pretty low. Now, there have been babies born before the 21st week, or at the 21st week anyway, that have survived, but not very many, and they usually survived with significant developmental delays. At 24 weeks, we're up to 40 to 70% survivability. At 25 weeks, 50 to 80%. 26 to 28 weeks, 80 to 92%. 29 weeks, you're up to 95% survivability. 30 to 31 weeks, 95% or higher. 32 to 33 weeks, we're reaching 98%. And from 34 weeks on, survivability is 98% or higher. So this information seems to support that traditional period of viability after the 28th week. Babies born prior to 24 weeks are at much higher risk of developmental complications. That risk naturally decreases with longer gestation periods, but it does not totally abate. Obviously, the lowest risk delivery occurs at full term. And again, much can depend on the standards of care and available resources at the birthing location. The other factor that has been brought up in the abortion debate is brain function as related to personhood, or basically, when do you become you? Besides the left and right hemisphere, your brain has two primary sections. The brain stem has three parts: the midbrain, the pons and the medulla, and the higher brain made up of the cerebellum and the cerebrum. The brainstem takes care of the autonomic functions: blood flow, hearing, balance, chewing, movement, heart rhythm, breathing, all those things we don't have to think about. The higher brain enables speech, thinking and reasoning, vision, judgment, problem solving, emotions, memory, social behavior, abstract thought, and things of that nature. Basically, the brainstem keeps the system running, and the upper brain adds the personality, what makes you you. Brain function happens in 2 stages. Some people like to refer to those stages as brain birth, but that's just for emotional impact, because it's not birth, it's levels of ongoing brain development integrated with the total life support system that is the mother's body. The lower brain stem comes online first, with the brain waves starting to be detected around 7 weeks, 8 weeks. First appearance of higher brain activity begins about 23 weeks of gestation, near that stage of initial viability. Even though birth at the stage of viability is possible, statistics are pretty grim. Studies from several reputable research groups indicate of singleton births at 23 weeks, 67% will die. 31% will survive with one or more major morbidities, and 2% will survive possibly without major issues. So it's no wonder that the few born at this stage that thrive are considered to be miracle babies, and those are kind of the ones we hear about in the media. Studies also show that brain development likely continues till the 39th week, till full term, with measurable impairments in areas like reading and math skills for children that are born at or prior to the 38th week of gestation. Given the info above, I think it's fair to say the fetus is really a fully integrated and unindividuated part of the mother's body, dependent and unable to survive effectively on its own till at a minimum the 24th to the 26th week. But even still, that's with the possibility of developmental impairments. Further, the fetus continues to develop and remains fully dependent and undifferentiated until complete live birth takes place. This pretty clearly defines what the minimum to optimum criteria is for viability and personhood. I would say a child should not be considered a human person with individual rights under the law until birth. Now let's move on to the religious arguments. For this, we will look at the 4 most prevalent religions: Judaism, Islam, Christianity, and Hinduism. There are followers of all those faiths that profess that life begins and you become a full-on human at conception. But that is not what the sacred texts have to say in regard to when personhood, or in religious terms, ensoulment, actually takes place. In Islam, from the Hadith, which is the record of the words and deeds of Muhammad, we have this, and I quote, "Verily, the creation of one of you is brought together in the mother's womb for 40 days in the form of a drop. Then you become a clot for a period, then a lump for a like period. Then there is sent an angel who blows into you the soul." Traditionally, scholarship reads this and other passages from the Quran and sacred texts as 3 40-day periods, or 120 days, before the angel is dispatched to carry one's essence to the waiting body. So it is a minimum of 120 days, which is about 17 weeks from conception, that ensoulment, that you become imbued with the elements that will begin to make you human, that may occur at that time and personhood begins to develop. Traditionally, scholarship reads this and other passages from the Quran and other sacred texts as 3 40-day periods, or 120 days, before the angel is dispatched to carry one's essence to the waiting body. That's a minimum of 120 days, or 17 weeks from conception, before ensoulment may occur or personhood begins to develop. In Judaism, the majority of foundational Jewish texts put forward that until birth, a fetus in the womb is a human, and I quote, under construction, and does not possess full personhood. In the Second Temple period, the idea of the soul entering the body at birth and exiting at death was accepted. In the Mishnah, an early rabbinic work, the question of a woman in distress during labor is addressed. It states that should her life be at risk, the fetus must be sacrificed to save her. But once the head emerges from the birth canal, then it is nephesh. It becomes a full human life, and both must be saved if possible. In Reform Judaism, the word nephesh means soul. This is the lowest level of soul. It vivifies the body and is responsible for instincts and body functions. It vests itself at birth and is the first level of soul. There are 2 more levels, the ruach, the emotional, and neshama, the intellectual. These must also enter the body before it is fully human as a person, and this all takes some months after birth. Judaism overall holds to the fact that the first breath at birth is when ensoulment takes place and development of personhood begins. In Hinduism, though reincarnation is an important element, beliefs in regard to personhood are not so dissimilar from the other religions. One of the most authoritative Ayurvedic texts, the Chakra Samhita, states, as do many other scriptural references, the soul does not attach to the body until the 7th month. And I quote, the occupant does not move into the house until the house is finished. It could be even later in the term, but definitely not before the mid-2nd trimester. Also, some Hindu theologians believe personhood becomes functional in the new body at the 5th month. Last up, we have Christianity. Beginning in the 12th century, the Church adapted the ideas of Aristotle, the epigenetic or evolutionary development of the soul, moving through a vegetative state to the sensitive or animal state to the intellective or human state. In the 13th century, Christian philosopher Thomas Aquinas, writing in his main work, the Summa Theologica, states, and I quote, that the intellectual soul is created by God at the end of human generation, meaning the end of gestation. And because they believed the early embryo did not have a human soul, they did not see abortion as murder, though they still condemned abortion. For early Christian theologians, the belief that ensoulment of the body occurs with the first breath of air was supported by passages cited in the Old Testament, primarily Genesis 2:7. Quoting from the Bible, "And the Lord formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." This indicates the fully formed and birthed being able to breathe in the air, the breath of life. So it appears that historically and at their core, none of these 4 major religions ascribe to or support the idea that a fetus is a fully human life at the moment of egg fertilization. Instead, we have 2 that put the minimum time frame around 16 to 17 weeks that and 2 that indicate personhood is initiated at birth when the child takes its first breath. And actually, religion should not even be considered in this debate. An individual's spiritual belief is a personal choice and a right guaranteed by the Constitution, as is the freedom to make one's own personal medical decisions. If you hold to a religious belief that does not support abortion, that is your choice. But under the individual rights secured by the Constitution, that belief cannot be given precedence, or can it be forced onto others that hold different views that allow abortion. Your connection to your God, goddess, great spirit, cosmic force, however you perceive your spiritual path and its guide, is personal and unique to you, as unique as you are yourself. And if you approach this God, this universal life force, with a sincere and open heart, you will not be denied the highest love or the grace and guidance to grow and share the wonders of the world in the way that is best for you. Having this personal connection does not mean you're on the journey alone. You'll meet others and you may walk shoulder to shoulder or hand in hand with them, but your footsteps on your path are made only by you. The problem that occurs with organized religions is they want you to follow someone else's footsteps. The robed managers have become intercessors and proscribed all the freedom and beauty of your personal relationship with your God. They've usurped it for the church. Religions are industrialized spirituality with a motive. They have rules designed to keep followers on a defined path, and they're willing to forge weapons to destroy those they see as sinners and threats and competitors. So we're going to leave this discussion here for now. In part 2, we'll take up the constitutional and some societal realities. But one more thing I have to say before I go. I hear on the news these days about how low President Biden's poll numbers are. People are frustrated, things aren't happening fast enough, inflation's going on, et cetera, et cetera. But I think people need to do a little bit of a reality check. And I and most of my friends, the people I know, think Joe's doing a pretty decent job, given the mess he was handed when he came into office that he's trying to clean up, and the current circumstances with the war in Ukraine and trying to finish up things around the COVID pandemic and all of that stuff. But if you're wondering why things are not happening faster and your pet project's not getting the attention it needs, you need to be looking at the obstructionist Republicans in Congress who are blocking the legislation that the Democrats are trying to pass in support of the president's agenda. Minority rule is not how democracy works, and the filibuster just has to go away. In regard to inflation, I think we need to be talking to some of the large corporate and multinational CEOs who are leveraging the lingering COVID and war-related supply chain situations as good cover for boosting profits. And if you cannot see there is a Republican war on democracy aiming to curb your voting rights and personal freedoms, you're not paying attention. We are headed down the path to minority rule, and it won't be pretty when we get there. So get off your butt, speak up, speak out to all your elected officials, both state and national, and talk to the people in any groups or associations you're involved with, and people on both sides, whether you agree with them or not. We have to find common ground. We're all humans. We're all in it for some of the same things, because there is truth in the statement, divided we fall. So get out and vote before it's too late. Thanks for listening. Talk to you again.